2, we're going to start with the A blocks. We're going to make 4 of these blocks. They're going to measure 6.5 when finished. So you're going to need to line up all of your squares and your rectangles just like this. Your rectangle blue will be at the top, then you have a white and red squares. And then your next row, you're going to have a blue underneath your blue rectangle, and then you're going to have white, red, and white squares. And then down here, you're going to have white underneath the blue square, red, and a white rectangle. And then you're going to have a red, a white, and a green rectangle. Now, you'll notice that you have a diagonal going. This diagonal is very important for our quilt. So, let's get started by assembling the very first top row. So I'm going to move these out of the way temporarily. What we're going to do is we're going to take our white and red squares and our blue rectangle. We're going to take our white, flip it over, and we're going to line it all up, take it to the sewing machine, sew 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then you're going to flip it over by pressing it to the white. And then you're going to repeat with the red on top of the white, and you're going to make your row. And then you're going to take your red, sew 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then take it to your ironing board again and press to the red. So everything's going to flow to your right side. So that is your first row. Your next row, you're going to take a blue and white, a red and white squares. First of all, you're going to start with your white and your red middle squares. You're going to flip the white over, and you are going to get 1/4 inch seam allowance and then press towards the red. And then take your blue and your white and sew them on the opposite ends of those two. Your white will be on the opposite end of the red, and the blue will be on top of the white. You're going to sew those together, and you're going to press everything again to this time you're going to press it to the left. So this is what it would look like when you get that complete. So everything is to the left. The reason we're doing it this way for pressing is everything will nest up when we start sewing our rows together. So our next row, you're going to take a white, a red, and a white rectangle. You're going to sew the white square with the red square, and you're going to get your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then take it to your ironing board, press to the red. Once those are together, you're going to have something that looks like this, and you're just going to flip this over, the white rectangle, line it all up, take it again to your sewing machine, do 1/4 inch seam allowance, and press to the white rectangle. So everything will be going to the right again. So this is what it will look like when complete. So everything is starting to look and flow together for our nesting of seams. Our last row is a red, a white, and a green. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to take the red and the white, we're going to sew those together. And we'll get something that looks like this. And you'll press it to the red. Then you're going to flip the green on top of the white. And line it up, sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. and then press towards the red area. So you're going to be pressing towards the left again. So now we have all of our rows together. So now we just need to nest them together. So we'll be doing that next. So now we're going to assemble 2A. So we're going to take and we're going to flip our green on top of our white rectangle. And we're going to line everything up, nest everything up, and sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're also going to do this with our first and second rows. We're going to go ahead and flip our second row on top of our first row, and we're going to nest everything up and sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When we come back, we'll be ready to assemble the full block. So now we have come back and we've got our bottom row all sewn together and we've pressed it towards the green. We've also got our 2 top rows sewn together and we've pressed it away from the blue rectangle, and now we are ready to assemble the final block. One last full stitch. So we're going to flip this over, nest it together, and you're going to take it back to your sewing machine. Sew your 1/4 inch seam allowance and press towards the green rectangle on the bottom. So when we come back, I will show you the full block. So now we've completed our 2A. Once we came back, we pressed away and we pressed to the green. So this is complete. This is measured 6.5 by 6.5. So now let's jump into making our mirrored block, the 2B.